there, Sorry from 17 once again. This is my no-death walkthrough for The Last Guardian. This is a pretty weird video to make for me, because this game itself, I don't really think should have commentary on it, mainly because it's just not that kind of game. I'm effectively going to be speaking through the full duration of this guide, and there's not that much to say. This is a really, really strange game. It's special in a lot of ways, it's unique in a lot of other ways, but fundamentally, the only real risk of death here is if you fall off certain scenarios, or if you get taken by the automatons who try to kidnap you later on in the game. Those are the two reasons that you might fail, and if you do so, you have to restart the checkpoint or dashboard on the XMB, which are the two ways to salvage the run. The game itself is effectively challenge-free for most of it, and a lot of the game is kind of dynamic in some pretty interesting ways, where the scripting and the triggers for a lot of scenarios can be quite vague and can happen in different orders depending on how you do them. For the most, what's expected of you is usually the same, and if you watch these videos, you will get some semblance of what is expected of you and where to go and what to do, but how that plays out is oftentimes out of your control in a lot of ways. And that might sound really strange to you, and it sounds strange saying it because this is a video game. But this is a strange video game, and this walkthrough is going to be talking quite a lot about that, but it's also going to be talking about other things, because I don't know how I'm going to fill the time it takes to beat this game with anything that is directly referencing in the game, because there's not much to it, guys. At the beginning here, I believe they want you to pick up the barrels to distract Trico so that you can actually navigate him and climb onto him and access him and what have you. But then that sequence ends by just pulling out the spear, so potentially just by pulling out the spear is the better option. And then you put back into the action right now with the barrels that I've already moved, and we're trying to get Trico to interact with them, and it begins this interesting relationship that you're going to see throughout the full game, where the detection on things in this game is weird. There are times when Trico does exactly what you expect him to do, there are other times when he doesn't, and it doesn't really matter what you do, it matters what he does. And the game has this wonderful AI and this wonderful mannerisms that they've captured of this animal performing much like what most animals perform like, but he also carries the trait that frustrates a lot of owners with animals, where they don't know what you're saying to them, they don't know truly what's expected of you unless you've really conditioned them into doing something, so they just kind of stare at you. And Trico is no different, and there are these awful moments where you can tell it wants to do something, but it can't quite do it. And you're trying to get it to do it, but it's not doing it. And it begins this dance that you're going to repeat all the way through The Last Guardian, this endless waltz of expecting something from this AI, and it doesn't happen. Right now we fed Trico the barrels, and the narrator mentions that now we've done that, we're able to climb him, because we've sated his appetite. And even the act of climbing in this game is kind of awkward and harder than it should be to do. And I don't want to spend the majority of these videos banging on The Last Guardian, but it has to be said, guys, this is a very archaic game in a lot of ways. The way it feels, the way its physics are applied, the way it detects, the way the AI interacts with things outside of, you know, the amazing realism of it, all of these come together to make probably one of the most frustrating games I've ever played. And I can't not say that to you, because I feel like you need to understand this if you're watching this to have some kind of idea of whether or not this game will be for you. So now that we've done whatever the hell we did just then, we're now able to climb Trico without him kicking us off. So the objective here is to free him from the chain. And once again, folks, you'll notice that I was able to climb him previously, but then it knocked me out and it transitioned to time periods. A lot of the moments in this game are quite vague about what they want of your character. So getting, you know, the immediacy that you would need to get through the game quite quickly is something that's going to come with time and with practice. And if you're going to go for the speedrun achievement, which I originally intended this to be, I would recommend that you back your save up. Because I was fast through a lot of areas. A few areas I made mistakes, and I tried to reset them and try them again. But for the most, the dog just doesn't do what you want it to do. You know, the dog, cat, bird, rat, whatever you want to call it. Trico just sometimes doesn't work. And it is endearing in a lot of ways, and it is going to help build towards the bond that you have with him, because when he finally does the thing you're asking him to do, there is that moment of, oh, thank God, and it does, the peak and the valley of it will build towards a stronger emotional feeling. But if that feeling is rage, it can oftentimes diminish the value of it, and I was angry for most of this game. Angry for a lot of reasons. Angry at why the boy is so animation heavy and so quick to take control away from me. Angry at the fact that he doesn't grab things when he should grab them. You know, angry at the fact that when he jumps, sometimes he doesn't grab ledges. Oh, and I just threw a barrel at Trico's face and took pleasure in that because he fucking annoys me. Like, there are so many beautiful artistic qualities in this game, but the part where it's a game is just so... It's like this dichotomy of love and hate, and it's not a game for everybody. And we often say that, don't we, towards games that have certain divisive aspects of them, or parts that polarize them from the general consensus, where this is a game you are going to either hate or love. There is really not going to be any middle ground. There might be those people that respect but don't enjoy, but for the most, it's going to be one of those two emotions. And it can oftentimes be both at the same time. It can be quite a contradiction, a wonderful juxtaposition of two very contrasting feelings. If you're watching this and you're curious, you know, will this game be for me? The simplest way I can put it without spoiling too much, because a lot of what you're going to enjoy here is 100% dictated by the people. It's by the story. It's the bond between the boy and the beast. It's the journey of getting through the struggles and the strife of this environment and finding a way to home, to hope. And if that's not something that interests you, if you're a kind of a destination kind of guy and not a journey, then this is not the game for you. There is no combat in this game to speak of at all. All there are moments where you are chased by enemies that grab you and take you to a door of doom, which just ends the game. There are moments where you use the shield that I have equipped right now to shine a glyph onto areas, and Trico will shoot it, and there are instances where you will shoot enemies with this mechanic. And then there are also moments where Trico fights, and he's incredibly powerful, knocking people to pieces, and you can kind of be an aid to him by removing spears from his body, or her body, I don't know the gender, or helping by pulling the heads off the automatrons once you're done with them. But aside from that, you will never directly feel like you are the hero of this story, because you aren't. So if that is something that is not for you, then you're going to struggle with this game. The next point is, do you like platforming and puzzling? Because that is the life's blood of The Last Guardian. This is a game where you are going to be navigating this beautiful lost land, and a lot of your time is going to be spent doing rather rudimentary platforming. This is not, you know, ridiculous wall-running, bunny-hopping, air-strafing, Titanfall, you know, Quake-style crazy arena movement, and it's not going to be the same as something like an Assassin's Creed, where you would move around the towers trying to find the right points of egress to proceed. This is a game where you do the simplest of terms of platforming, but there is a real sense of weight added to it because of the way the game controls, and because of how powerless your character is, in spite of being able to have the kind of grip strength that only that French guy who thinks he's Spider-Man can really achieve after, you know, 20 to 30 years of gripping off your ceiling. Like, it's this weird feeling as the player. Like, if you press the roll button towards a wall, you will bounce into the wall, it will throw you backwards, and it will take you a few seconds to stand back up. If you do a jump that's longer than your average jump, the boy will do so many recovery animations that you sit there watching it finish before you can continue. And there's every single opportunity where you could have been afforded a feeling of somehow powerful or in any way capable. It is stripped clean intentionally and removed. All of those properties are given to Trico. He is literally your hope, your salvation, and your way forward. Which leads us to the next part of the game, which is there's a really strange disconnect in The Last Guardian between what you're expected to do and what Trico's expected to do. And it breeds this really confusing puzzle structure of the puzzles in this game aren't necessarily that taxing. They might vex you for a while if you're missing a part of it or you don't quite see what's expected. But for the most, the biggest confusion that you're going to find in the game is knowing whether or not you're expected to tackle it or if Trico is. And that is something that is never fully communicated to the player in a good enough method, I don't think. And we need to bear in mind, folks, that this game was developed for quite some time. It's went through several iterations, and the gameplay was from a long time ago, and it shows this. The game definitely shows its age in its design. The areas that you will enjoy are like the touches, the subtleties. This is a very Spartan experience. It's minimalist to a T, but a lot of the stuff that is here is immaculately touched up and tailored to. There's a lot of love in this game. You can tell from the animations, you can tell from the world design. Even though it shows its age, it still manages to be striking. It still has a great artistic style and flair, and oftentimes it can be very beautiful. But all of this is going to live and die on whether or not you appreciate this kind of gameplay in your bond with the beast. Right now, I don't know if you need to get that barrel to get Trico to come down here, or if you can just spam is it L1 to call him? I'm not entirely sure, but you need Trico to come down so that you can use Trico to platform with you. And as I've mentioned, there's this wonderful feeling of just confusion where you'll go into an area, you'll investigate it as the boy looking for places to go, and then you'll think to yourself, well, I don't understand what's expected of me, there's nothing to climb, I can't see a point that will take me further forward. And the answer was quite simple, but you weren't in the mindset of playing The Last Guardian, so you weren't thinking correctly. The answer in almost every case is the beast. Right now, I'm trying to tell Trico to look towards the fountain, over there towards the waterfall, sorry, because I want him to go that direction, and as you can see, I keep pointing and I'm telling. It's not doing what I want. So instead, I move over here hoping that it will come to me, and I'm going to climb up here. If it covers the distance towards me, I can climb on it and then command it, and hopefully it'll come over here because I want it to lift me up onto this ledge. And you'll notice when you get off Trico, sometimes it moves a lot more towards where you want it to than it does when you're trying to command it. So this is the first step towards truly understanding how to move this beast. The next step is the commands. You just saw the boy jump then. To do that, you have to hold the command button and press triangle. This I've read on the internet after having beaten the game. This is something that tells Trico to jump. And throughout my first playthrough, I use this to command him because it seems to get his attention the best. So you can either hold the command button and press the direction to have him point, or you can hold the command button and press triangle. And when you do that, it tells him to jump in the direction that you are facing, and normally the AI will find kind of what you want it to do, and it will take its time doing it. There are cases where it doesn't, and once again, you have no real control over this. It's up to the beast. If you're doing the speedrun, these are the instances where you have to have backed your save up and you've got to go back to your save. If you get bad RNG here and Trico doesn't do what he's meant to do in some of these places, it will add up. And beating this game in under 5 hours is way tighter than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a lot easier now that I knew the puzzles, but I completely underestimated just how much the AI will fuck you in this game. And it will royally fuck you almost the entire journey. And that's 100% compounded by the moments like this. This is a cutscene, but you can't skip it. Most of the cutscenes in this game are engine-driven, so you can't skip them. There is, I think, 2 cutscenes in the game that are engine-specific, but can be skipped, and those are not even that long. So when you think speedrun in a lot of games, you think, well, if I just skip the cutscenes, then that'll be fine, because that's where I spent the majority of my time. I know where I'm going, I know what's expected of me, there'll be a few moments where I go the wrong direction and I recover, but for the most, once we skip the cutscenes, we'll be fine, right? Well, the game doesn't let you do that. There are so many moments you're going to be sat watching the game happen and showing its wonderful animations and its fantastic feather mechanics and the physics being applied and all that wonderful stuff, but the clock is ticking, and you're trying to beat this game quite quickly, and it is probably one of the worst games I can imagine trying to speedrun, because it is a game where almost 90% of what's expected of you is out of your control. And no matter how much you jump on top of Trico and you give him commands, sometimes he just doesn't listen. And there are other commands as well, I don't really know the use for them. If you do the command button and press square, this will tell Trico to attack, and sometimes in the combat sections, that can help. That can make him more aggressive, make him more assertive, and it can alleviate some of those encounters and make them go quickly. If you do X while you're holding the command button, you will kind of scold Trico and tell him off, but it doesn't seem to do anything. It doesn't seem to make him want to be a better animal and do what you want more, with an expediency in his step. It doesn't exist. He just kind of fucking ignores you a lot. And then there's the circle command while you hold the command button, and it does a praise. So it's telling Trico that he's done something good, where the boy jumps up and down and claps his hands. And I've never seen a point in using that, because there is almost no instances where the motherfucker does what you want. So you spend the majority of this game shouting at this animal, it does what you want eventually, and the interim between those 2 points is 100% dictated by scripts that you can't see, that you don't have control over. And it leads you to the most interesting question of all when it comes to The Last Guardian, is why the hell didn't they make him do things better? And I don't know, is it designed intentionally? There will be a lot of people who will defend this game by saying that's to add to the character, that's to add to the impulsive nature of animals. And I'm sorry guys, but we can't bring realism into something when we're having a serious conversation, because it's a null point. It doesn't exist in video games, and it shouldn't exist in video games. The only games that have realism on a pedestal are simulation games, and even then, it's a video game, so the realistic angle, I can understand it from some perspectives, but it doesn't work. So the second one is, it's designed that way to parrot realism, and it's just the way they wanted the game to be, to give it this idea of choice, this illusion of freedom, even though it's just wasting the player's time, if we're honest, and we should always be honest with ourselves. And then there is the next point, or the final point, is that they couldn't make it work better. They got it to a point of reliability, and they couldn't get it any further forward, so they just kind of left it as it is, to exist and to be appreciated or maligned depending on the player. And it's really weird on how it makes me feel, having now played the game twice. I really enjoyed my first playthrough, even though it was frustrating, because it was the joy of the experience, it was the joy of the journey, and of discovering why we were here, what we were doing, and building the relationship with Trico as I come over to this corner to try and call to him, and he's going to come and jump up here. But once again, guys, you're at the complete mercy of how long it takes him to do this. So if you are going for the speedrun, you need to, every time you do something successful and it's quick, you want to back your save up, because you will get fucked. I can give you 70 examples in my recording run of where I got completely fucked. The worst was when Trico has to go under the water and run for ages until the character passes out. It took him literally 10 minutes to do that, and he kept just getting back on the beach and jumping back in, and he wouldn't do it. Like right now, why will he not do this? There should be some kind of scripting that makes him choose the path of least resistance. Why did he not do that immediately? Why did he stand with his back to me, not giving a fuck? Like, I called him, I told him to jump, I did everything that's within the player's control, and none of these controls are very explicitly explained. It's just kind of, you have to learn to feel it and understand it by playing. And as I was saying, there were moments of the game on my first playthrough that I really, really liked, and I did find certain parts of it to be quite moving and to be very sincere. And I think it's magic at times, the way that they've made this creature like an actual animal, and your relationship with it, and how you completely rely on it to survive. And all of that, I think, is fantastic. But there is just, even then, even in those moments, I was angry all the time. And I can't, and don't get me wrong guys, I get angry at every game I play. I'm one of those people that I know exactly what I want the controls to do, and if they don't do it immediately when I want it to happen, I get pissed off. It's just the way I am. I'm used to games that feel immaculate, and even then, there are moments where those immaculate games have issues. So I'm quick to temper. It's not a lasting temper, but it's a temper that will get provoked regardless of how precise the game is. I will always find something that I wish was sharper because that's just how it works. I'm very difficult to please when it comes to the feel of a game, the movement, the controls. And then there's this game that every single step of the way made me incredibly angry. And it was kind of all the time. And I think maybe some of that anger and frustration maybe made those emotional points more powerful and more resonant. But I can't not tell you this if you're looking at this game and wondering if it's for you. This game is this really strange combination of the most unique experience you can find on modern consoles at the moment, that's dipped in like the halcyon days of when games didn't really work right, but they were still cool and awesome and had charm. And then there is the anger management part of it, where you might spend more time swearing than you do praising. And when you add it all up together, can I say without doubt that, you know, this is an amazing game? No, I can't. There are amazing parts of it, definitely. There are parts of this game that have made me feel things that no games have made me feel in a very long time. There are parts of this game that I would call beautiful and that I would call as close to art as you can get with video games. But there are also parts that made me want to snap my controller and jump out my fucking window head first. Because it doesn't work. And it's this weird thing of, it's not just the AI and it's not just Trico, it's the controls, it's the scripting, it's all sorts of moments. And it will happen to you too. But at the same time, I can't tell you not to try it. And I can't say that you might not enjoy it. And I don't want to tell you not to go near it, because it does so many things that I think should be applauded. And it's really easy to insult the game based on its performance. Because if you play this on the base PlayStation 4, it runs like shit. This is a game that It literally runs like you're peeling onions. It hurts your eyes, it runs so bad. There are moments later on in the game where I felt like the frame rate definitely got better, it definitely got more consistent, and it was nowhere near as bad. But a sequence like this, coming off a game with consistent 60 frames and coming to this particular area, is going to hurt your eyes. It's unforgivable. And the worst part is, this game's been in development a very long time, it doesn't look that impressive, there's no reason for it not to be optimised. I can appreciate that the physics that's being applied to all these individual parts of the world that are all moving in tandem is probably very stressful on the system, and everybody tells me that on the PlayStation Pro it's a much smoother experience, but I'm sorry guys, this thing was being developed for the PlayStation 3. There's no way that this shouldn't have been optimised and done correctly. It's not good enough, and it's unacceptable in today's era of gaming. And as much as every other part of this has charm and wins you over and seduces you because it's a game you want to love, it's a game you want to praise, it's not good enough. And in spite of that, there's still something here that I think is worth seeing. I can't imagine what this game would have looked like if they'd have been able to make it exclusively for the PlayStation 4 and exclusively for what they wanted the vision to be. Because there's a lot of love that's gone into a lot of aspects of it. Like the fur on Trico is probably the best looking fur I've ever seen. His back looks like the back of my African grey parrot that I had once. Like, he looks, and it animates and it moves so close to what it's intended to be that it's one of the most impressive feats of like just technical graphic design that I've seen in a game. And it must be ridiculous, and it must have taken a whole bunch of time. And the fur doesn't look the best that it could look in the grand scheme of things, but the way that it moves, the way that it comes together, it's magnificent. It's really, really good, I think. And there's a lot of aspects of this world that are really beautiful. The trees have such a unique look to them, but because they're always moving and because the light is so bright and highly exposed and blooming constantly, it gives these wonderful contrasts of brightness in between a lot of the more dank environments. And then you have the sense of scale. No game gets scale like this development team. If you played Ico, if you played Shadows of the Colossus, sorry, you will understand what I mean. This is a game that nails just the sense of where you are and the sense of something towering above you. And no game gets it right like these games do. But is that something that you want to pay 50 quid for? It's a tall order, and I can't tell you whether or not you should, but what I can tell you is I haven't really played many games like this, and that's exactly what you were expecting. But is that what you want? That's the tough part. A lot of people are criticising this game because they find it boring, that they don't think there's much story, that they don't think there's much gameplay. But there's just as much gameplay in this as there was in something like Ico. I don't understand what those people were expecting. The one area that I can understand getting more criticism is stuff like this, where there's meant to be these touching, realistic moments of Trico interacting with the food, but all this reads to me is scripting errors on the AI. He wants me to either move it closer to him, or he wants to move into a position where he can get to it correctly, and both of these ideas clash, because there are moments where it does it immediately, and there are moments where it doesn't. And I think that it's probably a culmination of the physics being applied, of his animations being applied, of his behaviour being applied. All of these things on top of each other lead to moments where he should just eat the barrel, and he doesn't. And at the base of this is just time wasting. Complete and utter time wasting. But there's also giving you time to build this relationship, and I think that's what they were going for, as the game introduces the wonderful dip to black camera reset feature, which I despise. And I don't understand why it does this. For some reason in this video game, when the camera gets to a point where it can't move correctly, and you try to move the camera, it will, instead of trying to auto-correct or giving you control and forcing its way to a position where it can use itself, it just dips to black and then repopulates you in a different angle, and it's really jarring and I hate it. It's just really bad. But look at this creature, guys. Look at what it's doing. At every moment, this creature's showing more character than anybody in Final Fantasy 15. It's ridiculous. The thing doesn't talk. It can't talk. There's a wonderful, when you let go of the fur and it does the fantastic... Also, if you're wondering what happened there, when you try and get off things in this game, it's very sticky. The kid grabs everything, so if you keep pressing X, you tell him to stop grabbing it, but oftentimes when you grab stuff, it will twist your axis, and it'll put you on a weird tilt. So if you let go, you will fall from the same tilt, and as you fall, the ragdolls get applied, and you do these super graceless side falls. They look great. But I don't even know if you had to give him food then. Once again, guys, I'm not entirely sure of the triggers of this game because it is so wonderfully vague. But I know what is expected here, and this is another moment where you need to use Trico to help you get up onto that balcony and go through that little hole. And then it's going to lead you to some two-dimensional platforming because you can't move the camera. And the platforming outside of here is not my favourite part of the game because I found it quite frustrating because the kid wouldn't jump the direction I wanted him to jump. Because do you know how platformers generally have a standardised control scheme, which is relative to the direction your character faces? If you hold up, your character goes up. If you hold to the left where his back is facing, he will jump to that direction. And there are parts of this game where that works and there are parts where it doesn't. And I was kind of fighting it quite a lot, so it can be a little bit frustrating. The controls in general are frustrating, and you can make them work though, guys. It's not about, you know, they don't work at all. It just means oftentimes you find yourself fighting them and not getting the result that you wanted. And this is compounded again by if you go for the speedrun, which is to beat the game in under 5 hours. And trust me folks, it's not as easy as it looks that. I really didn't think I was going to have any trouble. And then I got to, like, you know, the end of the game where you're doing that massive fight, and I ticked over 5 hours about at that point, and then I realised every time Trico did something stupid, I should have been resetting. But I'm one of those... Look, right now, all I want him to do is climb up. He would not climb up. Why? I've been playing platformers since fucking Mario. You know, I understand the concept of mantling a ledge. Prince of Persia did it perfectly. What is wrong with this game? And, like right here, why can't I jump across to that other thing? I don't know, because it wants me to go this very specific path and do this very, you know, formulaic measure of platforming before I can get to where I need to go. And if you drop here, the checkpoint is as you entered the room, so you have to do all this slow platforming again. And that's my only criticism of the platforming in the game. It's that it's just a little bit pedestrian at times, and a lot of the times it's just not very interesting. Some of it is Like when you're climbing the massive structures and you're on the vines and you're doing the tandem platforming between you and Trico, some of that is beautiful. It's really, really fun and interesting. And it's simple, but it's striking. And you get that really great sense of scale and that sense of vulnerability. But that bit just then is one of those moments where I just remove it. And then right here, I'm waiting for Trico to use his tail laser, and he's not even here. And it's just... It's weird, isn't it, folks, that there's been 2 games released this year, both in very close together, close proximity, where the main drive of the game is taking power away from the player, is removing control from the player. Final Fantasy 15 didn't even let you drive the car, gave you autopilot combat. This game 100% makes you rely on an AI companion that's sporadic. And both games have qualities, both games have failings. What those are will dictate your mentality towards them. But it's just this weird thing of... I can't ever imagine a game actively wanting me to have less control. Because I'm a control freak in games. I love control. If you let me control everything all the time, I will love you forever. If you let me cancel animations, I'll love you forever. If you let me just feel every movement, every part of a connection I possibly can from my analog to that character, me and you will be best friends. But when you flip that, I can't get on board with that. And this is a game about losing control. Almost all the way through it. Even when you're in control, you're not in control. It's that weird thing. And the animations aren't bad, guys. They're just so floaty and they take up so much priority. But the priority is an illusion. When you jump and he staggers, if you mash jump, you can cancel quicker out of the animation and jump. I know this because there's a sequence where another Guardian's attacking you and you have to jump on his head. And if you don't get to the platform to jump forward to get where his head is, he'll knock you out, so you have to do it quite quickly. And I was mashing X to try and get a better result, and boom, there it was. You know, he animation cancelled. It wasn't that quick, but it was quick for this game. And you might be wondering what's happening here. We're waiting for Trico to drop down, and I'm just running around hoping to trigger this in any way I can, and the trigger is the game. It just goes to this like vignette here, this different camera angle, and then Trico drops down. But I didn't do anything, and I couldn't speed it up. So why the fuck would you want to speedrun this? It's just frustration distilled. But it's unlike any other game you can play right now, and I would rather, you know, bring attention to creativity and to something that is this bold and daring, even if there is problems, than I would this endless tirade of brown chest-high wall shooters. And I'm about to get eaten, but it's okay, guys, because it's part of the game. This doesn't void the achievement either. You'll still get your trophy. That's meant to happen. But thank you for watching. This is a weird guide for a weird game, and I hope you take the journey with me, because there's something here. There's definitely something here. It just needed to be tighter. And if this measure of charm and beauty and heart is the price of all those problems, I think it's too steep. But I know there's a lot of people that will gladly pay it.